Mia had always been a gentle, loving woman, devoted to her little family. Pregnant with her second child, she found joy in preparing the nursery, picking out tiny clothes, and imagining a future filled with laughter. Her husband, Julian, was widely admired in their city, a successful businessman whose charm and generosity made him the darling of social events. Their home reflected the image of perfection, a sunlit living room filled with warmth, a garden meticulously landscaped, and baby Ethan, whose giggles echoed through the halls, completing the picture of a happy family. To the outside world, Mia's life seemed idyllic, the sort of life many envied. Friends would gush over the couple, praising Julian for his devotion and Mia for her grace. Social media portrayed a smiling, carefree family, one that appeared untouched by hardship or conflict. Yet beneath the pristine exterior, Mia lived a different reality. Julian's temper, hidden from public view, simmered constantly. A careless word or hesitant glance could ignite his anger, leaving Mia anxious and tense. She learned to move carefully through their home, mindful of his moods, and to smile even when her heart pounded with fear. Bruises were hidden under long sleeves, subtle marks covered with concealer, and tension masked behind practiced laughter. She told herself it was for Ethan's sake, for the baby growing inside her, that she endured, that she maintained the illusion of a happy life. Each day, fear and hope battled within her. She hoped Julian would change, that he could be the loving man he showed the world he was. And each day, she feared the next outburst, the next insult, the next moment when the fragile piece of her home might shatter. Living like this was exhausting, but Mia believed that preserving the family's image was worth the sacrifice, even if it came at the cost of her own happiness and safety. Over time, Julian's control tightened, subtle at first but increasingly suffocating. He monitored her every interaction, questioning who she spoke to and why, keeping track of her phone calls and messages with an obsessive intensity. Even minor disagreements became triggers for his disproportionate anger, with harsh words escalating into tense confrontations. Mia, once confident and independent, found herself doubting her own instincts, fearing the consequences of speaking up. Julian's insults were designed to undermine her self-esteem, to convince her that her opinions were trivial, her choices flawed, and that she had no right to challenge him. He insisted she obey for the family's sake, framing submission as an act of love, while in reality it was a mechanism of control. Friends began to notice subtle changes, Mia withdrawing from social events, seeming anxious or distracted, but Julian's charm and careful explanations kept suspicions at bay. Isolation became her constant companion. She stopped reaching out to old friends, fearing Julian's disapproval, and avoided sharing her true feelings even with close family members. Each day, the walls of their beautiful home felt more like a cage. Mia's hope for a better life clashed with the reality of constant scrutiny and manipulation. Trapped in this delicate balance of fear and obligation, she struggled to protect her unborn child while maintaining the illusion of a perfect marriage. The golden facade of her life now masked a darker truth, one she could no longer ignore but felt powerless to confront, as Julian's control over her world tightened with every passing day. Mia had always trusted the environment of her own home, believing it to be a sanctuary for her and her growing family. But lately, small details began to unsettle her, tiny cracks in the perfection that previously felt unshakable. Cameras appeared in unexpected places, discreetly tucked in corners of hallways or behind decorations that once seemed harmless. Their presence was subtle, almost easy to ignore, but Mia noticed them, and a chill ran down her spine each time her eyes fell on one. Employees she had known and trusted for years now avoided her gaze, their smiles seeming strained and cautious. She caught fleeting glances exchanged between them, whispers that stopped abruptly whenever she entered the room. The once familiar warmth of her household was replaced with a tense, suffocating atmosphere, and even simple chores became exercises in careful observation and restraint. Security measures in the house, once designed for safety, suddenly felt oppressive. Doors locked automatically behind her, motion sensors seemed to trigger with exaggerated sensitivity, and alarms were tested at odd hours. Each new system added another layer of anxiety, making her feel as though she was constantly being watched and measured. Gradually, Mia's unease solidified into a growing suspicion. Julian might be documenting her actions, her words, and even her emotions. Was he building a record, a trail that could later be used to intimidate or control her further? Despite the gnawing fear that crept through her every thought, Mia tried to calm herself. She reassured herself that perhaps she was overreacting, that pregnancy and stress were playing tricks on her mind. She focused on the baby growing inside her, trying to preserve her sanity and protect the tiny life she carried. She convinced herself that if she remained careful, cautious, and compliant, everything would remain safe. But deep down, an unsettling truth lingered: her once safe home might now be a prison, and the danger she sensed was not imagined. The argument began over something trivial, an overlooked dinner invitation that Mia had forgotten to RSVP to, but the moment Julian's voice rose, the air in the room grew heavy with tension. At first, it was words, sharp and cutting, but then his temper erupted in a way Mia had never experienced. Without warning, he shoved her against the wall with enough force to knock her breath away. Pain shot through her back and shoulders, and she instinctively pressed herself against the wall, trying to remain composed despite the sting of the impact. Her heart pounded, her mind raced, and for the first time, she felt the stark reality of the danger she was in. Julian, however, was a master of deception. Minutes later, the front door opened, and neighbors stopped by unexpectedly. Julian's demeanor shifted instantly, his charming smile returned, laughter and warmth spilling from him as if nothing had happened. To the visitors, he was the perfect husband, courteous and composed, offering them drinks and engaging in casual conversation. Mia nodded silently, her lips tight, her body trembling, forcing herself to play the part of a happy wife, all while her mind reeled from the violence she had just endured. She realized, with a sinking dread, that the danger was escalating and that his charm in public was a deliberate mask, a shield he used to manipulate perception while his private aggression grew unchecked. Fear for her unborn child filled her thoughts as she tried to anticipate the next confrontation. She began to strategize ways to protect herself and Ethan, small steps to avoid provoking Julian while keeping the baby safe. Each plan, however, was accompanied by a sharp pang of anxiety. What if he retaliated? What if one misstep led to more serious harm? The thought of leaving or seeking help was daunting. Julian's influence and temper made escape seem impossible. Still, a quiet determination began to take root within her. She understood that she could no longer ignore the signs. She had to prepare, to stay alert, to protect her child, even if that meant living in constant tension and fear. One afternoon, the tension reached a horrifying peak. Mia cradled baby Ethan in her arms, humming softly to soothe him, when Julian's anger flared over a minor household disagreement. Words escalated into shouts, and before she could react, Julian grabbed her roughly, yanking her toward the staircase. The walls of the hallway blurred around her as panic surged through every nerve. Her arms tightened around Ethan, every muscle straining to protect him, while she screamed silently in desperation, praying he would remain safe. Julian's strength was overwhelming, and Mia felt herself losing control of the situation. Her mind raced, imagining the worst-case scenarios: falling down the stairs, the baby injured, herself unable to prevent disaster. Instinctively, she shifted her weight, attempting to brace against the railing and slow their movement, her grip on Ethan unyielding. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity, the world narrowing down to the fragile body she held close and the violent force threatening it. She cried out, her voice a mix of fear and defiance, refusing to relinquish her child to harm. Her heart pounded in her chest as every ounce of her being focused on survival, on shielding Ethan, on weathering the storm of rage that had engulfed her once safe home. The moment escalated faster than Mia could process. 1 second, she was holding Ethan in her arms, trying to soothe his tiny cries, and the next, Julian's anger erupted with terrifying force. He grabbed her roughly, yanking her toward the staircase. Mia's heart raced, and fear coursed through her every vein as she realized the danger that was about to unfold. She tightened her grip on Ethan, pressing him against her chest as if sheer determination could shield him from harm. Julian's shove sent them both tumbling down the steps, each movement punctuated by sharp, bone-rattling jolts. Pain shot through Mia's body as she rolled, instinctively hitting walls and railings to slow the fall. Every nerve in her body screamed with alarm, but her focus remained singular: protect Ethan at all costs. She twisted and turned, absorbing the impact as best she could, her arms wrapped tightly around the baby. Tears streamed down her face as panic mingled with adrenaline, each second feeling stretched beyond endurance. Somewhere in the background, the faint sound of a door opening or someone gasping indicated neighbors or staff had heard the commotion. Yet in those critical moments, nobody was able to intervene quickly enough to stop the violence. Through the chaos, Mia's mind worked frantically, calculating angles and movements that might prevent worse injury to Ethan. Her legs thudded against the stairs, her back scraped against the walls, and her head hit a railing, leaving searing pain in its wake. The camera installed in the hallway recorded everything, capturing the horror of the moment in stark, unflinching detail. In that instant, Mia realized that this footage could later serve as undeniable proof of Julian's brutality. Though pain enveloped her body, and fear threatened to paralyze her, she clung to the one thing that mattered, the fragile life in her arms, Ethan, and her determination to survive for both of them. As the fall ended and the chaos subsided, the home was eerily silent except for Ethan's soft whimpers and Mia's shaky breaths. Security cameras, integrated with the household alarm system, automatically triggered alerts to local authorities, signaling an emergency. Mia, though in pain and shaken to her core, managed to reach her phone. She dialed emergency services, her voice trembling as she described her injuries and the baby's condition, her words clipped yet urgent. She knew that every second counted, and she could not afford hesitation. Within minutes, paramedics arrived at the residence, rushing through the door with practiced efficiency. They moved quickly, assessing Mia and Ethan with professional calm. Mia, though conscious, felt her body throb from the impact of the fall, but she remained focused on keeping Ethan secure. The paramedics checked his vital signs first, confirming that, despite the terrifying tumble, he had not suffered critical injuries. Then they attended to Mia, carefully examining her scrapes, bruises, and the pain radiating from her limbs. Both mother and baby were swiftly transported to the hospital, sirens cutting through the afternoon air. Mia remained alert despite the shock, mentally recounting every movement during the fall to inform the medical team. Once at the hospital, doctors and nurses immediately began documenting her injuries in detail, noting the potential risk to the unborn child. Vital signs were monitored, and emergency scans were scheduled to ensure both Mia and Ethan were safe. Amid the controlled chaos, one truth was clear: Mia and her baby had survived the ordeal, but the reality of Julian's violence had been captured in every detail, ready to become a cornerstone of the evidence against him. At the police station, investigators watched the surveillance footage from Mia's home with a mixture of disbelief and horror. The video played out in crisp detail, each second capturing the terrifying reality of what had occurred. Julian's actions were deliberate, calculated, and unrelenting. The footage showed him shoving Mia while she cradled Ethan in her arms, sending them tumbling down the staircase. Every moment of the fall was visible, the way Mia twisted her body to shield her baby, how she rolled against walls and railings in desperate attempts to slow the impact, and the sheer terror etched across her face. Police officers exchanged glances, recognizing the gravity of the situation. This was not a simple accident or a momentary lapse in judgment. Julian's intent was unmistakable, his violent control manifest in every frame. The way he followed through, despite the potential for severe injury to both Mia and Ethan, made it clear that this was an act of deliberate harm. Investigators noted the precision with which the cameras had captured the event, providing undeniable evidence of both his aggression and Mia's desperate struggle to protect her child. Every detail of the footage was meticulously documented. Law enforcement immediately classified it as critical evidence of attempted harm, potentially rising to the level of attempted murder due to the involvement of an infant and a vulnerable mother. The video became the cornerstone of the case, leaving no room for doubt about what had occurred. Its clarity and unflinching depiction of the fall ensured that Julian's actions could no longer be denied or minimized. For Mia, it was a small relief that the truth of what had happened would be seen and understood, providing a crucial foundation for justice to follow. Word of the incident spread quickly, reaching Mia's family within hours. Shock and disbelief rippled through them, swiftly replaced by a fierce, protective anger. They gathered immediately, racing to the hospital where Mia and Ethan were being treated. The ride was tense and silent, each family member struggling to comprehend the horror that had unfolded and fearing for the safety of both mother and child. Upon arriving, Marcus, Mia's older brother, took immediate control. His expression was a mixture of fury and resolve as he assessed Mia's condition and ensured she and Ethan were prioritized by the medical staff. He listened intently to the doctor's updates and asked detailed questions about the injuries, determined to fully understand the severity of the situation. Marcus then turned his attention to legal and protective measures, refusing to allow Julian any opportunity to further harm his sister or nephew. He quickly contacted domestic violence authorities, explaining the situation in full and insisting on the maximum level of protection available. Security measures were immediately arranged, and hospital staff were alerted to restrict Julian's access. Marcus coordinated with the authorities to ensure that no gaps in safety could be exploited. For Mia, the presence of her family, especially Marcus, brought a measure of comfort she had not felt in months. She realized she was no longer alone, and that her loved ones would fight relentlessly to protect her and Ethan. In that moment, the weight of fear began to lift slightly, replaced by the first glimmer of hope for safety and justice. As news of the incident began to spread, Julian scrambled to control the narrative. Publicly, he portrayed himself as a concerned husband, claiming Mia had somehow lost her balance and fallen on the stairs while holding Ethan. He posted carefully crafted messages on social media, expressing concern and insisting that no one should jump to conclusions without knowing the full story. Behind closed doors, he contacted a team of high-powered lawyers, instructing them to pressure the hospital staff and anyone involved in the investigation to downplay the severity of the injuries. He attempted to reach neighbors and employees, subtly encouraging them to provide statements suggesting that the incident was an accident and that Mia might be exaggerating her fears. Despite Julian's frantic efforts, the evidence was overwhelming. The surveillance footage, captured by the cameras in the hallway, clearly showed him shoving Mia while she held Ethan, causing them to tumble down the stairs. Every movement, every desperate attempt Mia made to protect her baby, was recorded in unflinching detail. Hospital reports confirmed the extent of Mia's injuries, documenting both her physical trauma and the potential risk to her unborn child. Witness statements from paramedics and medical staff further corroborated her account. Julian's attempts to manipulate perception crumbled under the weight of irrefutable evidence, leaving him increasingly desperate and panicked. Even with his wealth and influence, Julian could not erase what had happened. The truth was visible, undeniable, and horrifying. Law enforcement and the public alike began to see the incident for what it truly was, an act of deliberate aggression against a vulnerable mother and her child. Julian's facade of charm and control could no longer hide the violence and danger he had inflicted, marking the beginning of his unraveling. Given the gravity of the situation, a pregnant woman and her infant endangered in their own home, the FBI quickly became involved. The case was immediately flagged as high-profile due to Julian's status and the potential for further harm. Agents specializing in domestic violence and high-risk family assaults coordinated with local authorities to ensure Mia and Ethan's safety. From the outset, their approach was strategic and meticulous, designed to prevent Julian from fleeing, destroying evidence, or intimidating witnesses. Mia and Ethan were placed under protective observation while the FBI began monitoring Julian's movements closely. Every phone call he made, every interaction with friends, employees, or family, was carefully documented to ensure that no further manipulation or threats could occur. Surveillance teams were deployed, and secure communications were established between the hospital, law enforcement, and Mia's family. The FBI also coordinated with domestic violence specialists and victim protection agencies to create a safe environment for Mia. Emergency relocation plans were prepared in case Julian attempted to approach her or interfere with her safety. Agents worked alongside hospital security, ensuring that all entrances were monitored and that Julian could not enter under any pretense. Simultaneously, the FBI began constructing a legal strategy to address the severity of the crime. They cataloged the surveillance footage, hospital documentation, and witness statements, building a case that clearly illustrated both the intentional nature of Julian's actions and the imminent danger he had placed Mia and Ethan in. the agents recognized the urgency of the situation, understanding that swift intervention was necessary not only to protect the victims but also to ensure justice would be served. Every precaution, every measure, was taken to guarantee that Julian could no longer threaten the lives of the people he had violently endangered. With Marcus by her side and the support of her family, Mia finally found the courage to speak openly about the months of fear and abuse she had endured. The weight she had carried alone, hidden bruises, whispered threats, and moments of terror, was now shared with those who could protect her and bring justice. In a calm but resolute voice, she recounted every abusive incident, from the early moments of controlling behavior to the shocking violence of the fall down the stairs. She described how Julian had manipulated her, isolated her from friends and family, and constantly undermined her confidence, all while projecting a flawless image to the outside world. Mia emphasized the particular fear she had for her baby, Ethan, describing the dread she felt when Julian's anger threatened not only her but the fragile life in her arms. Every word was measured and intentional, a testament to her determination to ensure that no detail was overlooked. She explained how she had tried to protect herself and her child, how she had hidden injuries, and how her fear had dictated nearly every action in the household. Her testimony was bolstered by irrefutable evidence. Medical reports documented her injuries and the risk to her unborn child, while the surveillance footage clearly captured the violence in shocking detail. Investigators listened attentively, taking careful notes as the narrative unfolded. Mia's voice, strengthened by the presence of her family, became a powerful instrument of truth. The combination of personal testimony, corroborating evidence, and expert documentation created an airtight case against Julian, leaving no room for doubt about his intent or the danger he posed. For the first time in months, Mia felt the empowering weight of being heard, knowing that her courage was pivotal in protecting her child and securing justice. Once Mia's testimony was recorded and the case solidified, arrangements were immediately made to move her and Ethan to a secure location. Victim Protection Services coordinated every detail, ensuring that the residence was undisclosed and fortified against any potential threat from Julian. The house was monitored by security personnel, with strict protocols in place to maintain anonymity and safety. Mia felt a profound sense of relief as she stepped inside the secure home, finally able to exhale after months of constant tension and fear. For the first time in a long while, Mia slept without waking to the imagined threat of Julian appearing in her home. Ethan, too, rested peacefully, unaware of the danger that had surrounded him. The sense of calm was transformative, allowing Mia to focus on nurturing both herself and her baby. She began to rebuild the routines and small joys that had once been taken for granted: quiet mornings with Ethan, gentle walks around the secure property, and the freedom to speak openly with her family and counselors without fear of repercussion. Emotional healing became a central focus. Professional therapists specializing in domestic abuse and trauma worked closely with Mia, helping her process the months of fear, anxiety, and helplessness. She began to confront the psychological scars Julian had left, learning strategies to cope with trauma while regaining her sense of agency. Gradually, she embraced a renewed sense of self, recognizing her strength and the importance of reclaiming her life. The security, support, and professional guidance created an environment where Mia could flourish, allowing her to nurture Ethan in a safe, loving space. For the first time, the reality of protection and freedom felt tangible, reinforcing that she and her baby were no longer at Julian's mercy. News of the horrifying incident quickly reached the public, spreading like wildfire across social media, television broadcasts, and news websites. Headlines screamed of Julian's violent actions, leaving no room for ambiguity. Husband shoves pregnant wife and baby downstairs, cameras capture brutal assault. The public reaction was immediate and visceral, with widespread outrage directed at Julian. Stories detailing his controlling behavior, past allegations, and the terrifying incident circulated rapidly, leaving Julian's carefully cultivated image in ruins. Sponsors and business partners, eager to distance themselves from scandal, quickly severed ties. Investors pulled their funding, and professional colleagues publicly denounced his behavior, emphasizing that such violence had no place in business or society. Even acquaintances and friends who had once praised Julian now questioned their associations, expressing shock at the disparity between his public persona and the horrifying private reality. The surveillance footage, now circulating in controlled releases to authorities and select media, provided undeniable evidence of the assault. The video's clarity, combined with medical reports and eyewitness accounts, left the public stunned. Julian's charm, which had once garnered admiration, was now recognized as a mask concealing a violent and dangerous man. His attempts to manipulate perception and maintain control were shattered, replaced by a growing consensus that justice was not only necessary but urgent. As the story went viral, discussions emerged across social platforms, news outlets, and community forums about domestic violence, accountability, and the importance of intervention. For Mia, the widespread attention was both terrifying and vindicating. While the exposure intensified scrutiny, it also ensured that Julian's actions could no longer be hidden or excused, highlighting the urgent need for protection and legal action. When the trial began, Mia entered the courtroom with a quiet determination that surprised even those who knew her strength. The months of fear, abuse, and uncertainty had forged a courage she never realized she possessed. Seated with her family, Marcus prominently beside her, she recounted every harrowing detail of Julian's controlling behavior and violent outburst. Her testimony was precise, detailed, and emotionally compelling, emphasizing the ongoing fear she had lived with and the immediate danger posed to her baby, Ethan. Medical professionals took the stand, presenting comprehensive reports documenting Mia's injuries, the risk to her unborn child, and the lasting psychological impact of the assault. The surveillance footage was played in court, the images of Julian shoving Mia and her desperate attempts to protect Ethan leaving jurors and observers visibly shaken. FBI agents detailed their investigation, describing the coordination between local authorities and federal intervention, ensuring the family's safety while building a robust case against Julian. Experts in domestic violence provided context, explaining the patterns of controlling behavior and how such acts could escalate to life-threatening situations. The courtroom atmosphere was tense but solemn, as the weight of evidence and testimony left little room for doubt. The judge, reviewing the exhaustive documentation and viewing the video evidence, condemned Julian's actions as monstrous and unforgivable, emphasizing that the deliberate endangerment of a pregnant woman and her infant could not be tolerated under any circumstances. Julian received a long prison sentence, his power and reputation shattered. Mia's legal victories extended beyond punishment. She was granted full custody of Ethan, protective measures were established to prevent further contact with Julian, and she gained control over shared assets, ensuring her financial independence. In the courtroom, a sense of closure began to emerge. Mia had transformed from a frightened, controlled wife into a survivor who had reclaimed her life and her family. Her courage, combined with the unwavering support of Marcus, medical professionals, and the FBI, had secured justice and established a foundation of safety, protection, and empowerment for the future. After the trial and the protective measures were firmly in place, Mia began the long process of rebuilding her life. The first priority was the safety and well-being of her baby, Ethan, who was now thriving in the calm and secure environment her family had helped create. Each day, Mia focused on nurturing him, creating routines filled with love, laughter, and care, slowly allowing both her and her child to recover from the trauma. Physical healing from her injuries progressed steadily, with medical follow-ups ensuring she regained strength and mobility. Equally important was her emotional recovery. Months of fear, anxiety, and helplessness had taken a significant toll, but with professional counseling and the unwavering support of Marcus and her family, Mia began to confront the psychological scars left by Julian's abuse. She learned coping strategies, methods to manage anxiety, and ways to rebuild her confidence, gradually reclaiming her sense of autonomy. Mia moved into a modest, secure home where the past violence could not intrude. The environment allowed her to breathe freely and to embrace a sense of normalcy, providing a sanctuary for herself and Ethan. She decorated it warmly, filling it with personal touches and symbols of hope, marking a stark contrast to the fear-filled days of her previous life. As her confidence returned, Mia felt compelled to help others. She began advocacy work, speaking at events and sharing her story with survivors of domestic abuse. Using her experience as a platform, she provided guidance, hope, and practical advice for women in similar situations. Her journey became not just one of survival, but of empowerment, showing that life after trauma could be filled with strength, love, and purpose. In the quiet moments of reflection, Mia recognized the depth of her resilience. The ordeal with Julian had tested every part of her, physically, emotionally, and mentally, but she had endured and emerged stronger. Julian, once a dominating presence in her life, had faded into irrelevance, his public image destroyed and his power curtailed. His attempts to control and intimidate had ultimately failed, leaving Mia free to live without fear. Mia's focus remained on her family, particularly Ethan, whose safety and happiness had become her anchor. Every small milestone, his first steps, first words, and everyday laughter, served as a reminder of the life she had fought to protect. Marcus and the rest of her family continued to provide unwavering support, creating a network of love and stability that had been absent during the months of fear and violence. Their unity fortified Mia's sense of security and gave her confidence to step fully into her new life. The experience transformed Mia into a voice for others. She continued advocacy for domestic violence survivors, using her story to inspire hope, resilience, and the belief that justice is attainable. Her public presence was not one of fear, but of empowerment, demonstrating that survival is possible even in the face of deliberate harm. Ultimately, Mia's story became a symbol of courage. It proved that trauma, no matter how severe, could be overcome with strength, support, and determination. She had rebuilt her life from the ashes of fear, and in doing so, she had ensured that her baby grew up in safety and love. Free from Julian's control, Mia embraced her future fully, living proof that survival, justice, and a renewed sense of self were not only possible, they were inevitable.